So, did something happen? Yeah, an unprecedented leak at the Supreme Court, sending Democrats and Republicans into a frenzy, but for different reasons. Chief Justice John Roberts confirming the authenticity of a draft opinion that would overturn Roe versus Wade, while pointing out that the Supreme Court has not made a final decision. Roberts ripping the leak as an egregious breach of trust and is ordering an investigation. President Biden and Democrats ignoring the leak and are instead attacking Republicans and conservative justices on the high court.
If this decision holds, it's really quite a radical decision.
This is a dark and disturbing morning for America.
This is a 5-alarm fire.
We need to get rid of the filibuster, and Roe is just Exhibit A.
Part of this November's election, reproductive rights will be on the ballot.
This would appear to be an invitation to have, Handmaid's Tale type anti-feminist regulation.
These justices are acting like this is somehow something that they have the right to change. They do not have the right to change this.
Wow, this isn't coordinated at all. Democrats also telling their supporters to get out there and protest. Meanwhile, Republicans say the leak was meant to intimidate the justices into changing their vote.
The radical left immediately rallied around the toxic stunt, making a last-ditch Hail Mary attempt to cause a political firestorm and cause the court to reconsider.
The Democrats really don't see the rule of law or the court's independence as principles that are above politics.
That's a real significant breach of trust. You want to talk about an insurrection, that's a judicial insurrection.
If only we had a judge here. All right, Judge. Who do you think leaked it and why? And give us your assessment of this whole scene.
I don't have the slightest idea who leaked it, but I'll tell you this. Whoever leaked it did something that is unheard of in American history. I mean, you just don't leak a decision by any judge, let alone a Supreme Court justice. I mean, there is, and one of the things that we can be proud of is that the justices on the Supreme Court, they can be on the opposite side of issues, but you never hear about them not getting along. I mean, we hear about Scalia, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the best of friends, although ideologically they were on opposite sides. So whoever leaked this, we have to find out who the person is and charge them with a crime. I don't know what the crime would be, whether it's some kind of fraud on government property. I've heard there's a statute, fraud on a government, that's very broad that could include this kind of act. But I'll tell you what's so interesting about this is if they wanted to gin up the left, who was in for an alleged bloodbath in November by the Republicans, there is no better way to do it than with Roe versus Wade. But if you'll just indulge me for a minute, I read the decision at length, the Dobbs decision, as well as Roe again. Roe, they say, in this decision is an exercise of raw judicial power. In other words, it is a Supreme Court acting as a legislative body. And understand that if this decision is ultimately the decision of the court, it doesn't outlaw abortion. All it says is we're saying it's not a constitutional right. Congress can pass a law. So if Chuck Schumer is so fired up, pass a law, Chuck. Every state can pass its own law. They can negate it. They can ban it. They can promote it, whatever they want to do. But this is what I think is so stunning about it. This decision says there is no right to abortion that is implicit in the Constitution. Understand there are 3 tests. Number 1, is it in the Constitution? Is it a constitutional right? Freedom of speech is a constitutional right, First Amendment. The right to bear arms is a constitutional right, Second Amendment. But the right to an abortion, it is implied based upon what Roe says is the First, Fourth, Fifth, Ninth, 14th Amendment, and I won't get into it, but they say we don't know which one for sure, but it's through the Due Process Clause. In order for it to be part of due process and legal and constitutional, it must be deeply rooted in our nation's history and tradition, and it must be implicit in ordered liberty. Is abortion deeply rooted in our nation's history? No. In fact, at the time of Roe, virtually every state outlawed abortion, and right before Roe, going back to the common law, it was murder, and then it was reduced to a misdemeanor in some states. And is it implicit in the concept of ordered liberty? No. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that. So that is something that is based, I think, very well very well argued. And, you know, in order for the left to get everyone fired up, they want someone on the right to cave to the mob. They want to intimidate some justice on the right to back up and support it. But it's not a constitutional right like same-sex marriage, like interracial marriage, like contraceptive, Loving versus Virginia, Griswold versus Connecticut, all those cases. This involves a third party, and that's the difference.
There you go. That was pretty clear.
There you go.
I feel like I'm going to just say.
Thank you for coming to her TED Talk.
I know, exactly. So the judge brings up something very interesting, the timing of this. And we talked about this, that things are going so bad for the Democrats that they need something. And, I mean, this is an amazing distraction before the midterms. Now everyone's hair is on fire instead of talking about or focusing on inflation, crime, the border.
So I have lots of different thoughts. One, I think that the people who supported Roe v. Wade were living on borrowed time, and they knew it. Because this decision, as the judge just pointed out, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg was like, this thing was poorly decided. And so at some point that was going to happen. There's a lot of claims today that this is the death of democracy, when actually what happens is your state legislature will decide to bring it up again. And some states like Colorado have a very, very permissible abortion. And then you might have another state like Mississippi that's going to go in a different direction. But the voters will get to decide. And that is what happens in our republic. That's how it works.
Yeah, and Roe v. Wade was anti-democratic because the Supreme Court is not a democratic institution.
Absolutely. And so when you have somebody like Liz Warren saying, well, we absolutely must kill the filibuster in order to pass this, well, they couldn't pass it even in February. They got 46 votes for a bill that they wanted to try to codify Roe. It doesn't work. So you have, for example, AOC attacking Kyrsten Sinema today, but they don't even have the votes. So the internal Democratic fighting will continue. I also think that you're going to hear a lot about that the justices, when they were in their confirmation process, would have private meetings with senators, and they would tell them what they thought, because they always are asked, do you think that Roe v. Wade is settled law? And they'll say, well, they told me it was settled law. Well, now you'll have some senators saying, they lied to me. And so the question is then why, and maybe when the decision actually comes out, there will be a more fulsome discussion of that as to why this happened, or maybe they'll do an interview. But remember, separate but equal was settled law until it wasn't as well.
Right.
So there was a case that is brought before the courts, it's gone through the system, and even the liberals knew that Mississippi state law, when it got passed, they thought, oh boy, here we go. And I think that my last point would be that both sides have gotten exactly what they said is coming for years. For however long, how long has Planned Parenthood been telling everybody that if Roe is overturned, women are going to die and be second-class citizens, which is why you have a lot of people actually think that today. And then on the right, they've been saying if you elect Republican presidents and Republican senators and you nominate conservative judges, then you will get to overturn Roe v. Wade. So now both sides are going to have to deal with the fallout on it. Yeah.
You know, Joey, I think, what scares me about this decision, it's obviously going to target the truly marginalized, and I speak of pregnant men. What are your thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts, but I know I don't have a lot of time. So there are two issues here. One is the leak, which stands in itself as a controversy. The other is what might happen with Roe versus Wade and how abortion's handled in this country. I think the one thing that I want to remind people is that people sitting at home watching right now aren't constitutional scholars. And we accept that there's a religious right and there's a very liberal progressive left that are very passionate about this issue. But there's a lot of people in the middle that have an opinion on this issue. Every agnostic person that's ever held their own child in their hand probably has an opinion about this issue. Every single mother that's ever been in a place that she felt like was between rock and a hard place in the worst circumstance has an opinion on this issue. And that's why the Supreme Court looks at this issue as unsettled as the law in the land. And that's why it's probably important that someone who's even pro-abortion, but a constitutionalist might say, yeah, Roe versus Wade probably overreached and didn't allow the people in this country to make this decision, because it may be the most complex issue we ever decide as a nation. We're asking the question, what is life? Somewhere between conception and consciousness. That's a hard issue to explain or to define, and science isn't there. That's why the Supreme Court struggled with this, and that's why so many people struggle with Roe versus Wade.
Jessica, last word to you.
A lot of words. I was shocked by this last night. I really did not expect 9 o'clock that suddenly this would be what was happening. Obviously, it's something that liberals have warned of and that conservatives have long wanted, so I guess it's not a complete surprise. The timing is strange. I have seen feasible arguments for why it was a liberal clerk that leaked this and why it was a conservative clerk who leaked this, because if it was a conservative, it might be someone who wants to keep all the 5 judges that are on the side of Alito's opinion in their box there. And they don't want to leave any room for pushback, probably on someone like Justice Kavanaugh, who I think out of that group would be the most likely to maybe side with Roberts, who it seems like is not with the group of 5 and is writing a separate concurrence. So leaking is bad. It should not happen. There have been partial leaks before. Actually, the original Roe decision, I thought that was fascinating, was partially leaked. But it's obviously a huge deal. The numbers speak for themselves. 63% of Americans believe that abortion should be legal in all or most cases. Most cases is where we get into trouble, to Joey's point, and that people want to have some sort of conversation about a viability date, right? That I think we can all agree, at least at this table, that these laws that have come into place in conservative states like Mississippi, where we're talking about 6-week abortion bans. I was recently pregnant. I did not know that I was pregnant at the 6-week mark. I wanted my baby. I am thrilled to have my daughter. But that doesn't mean that I should have my ability to make my own healthcare decisions stripped away from me because I happen to live in that state. What Elizabeth Warren was talking about, and everyone can make fun of her about her hysterical nature, she's absolutely correct. This law will hurt poor women. This law will hurt women who do not have access to good health care. I'm an upper middle class white woman. I will be able to get whatever health care I want for the rest of my life. That is not true of women that are struggling, people who are working 2 jobs. And also the majority of women who get abortions, guess what? They've already been mothers. There are people who are making family planning decisions. This is not about teenagers running around and getting pregnant in a car and just saying, oh, I don't care, or people who think that abortion is the same as the morning after pill. It is not. It is one of the most carefully considered decisions that a woman makes. And that's why this law was so important. It was about privacy, that I should be able to go into a room with my doctor and make a decision.
Them to try to influence them to get an abortion. That's part of the problem. It is a nuanced thing that every specific individual has to make for themselves. And that might be why states should be able to decide as a culture in a sovereign state how they're going to handle it.
Why should you be someone who can't live in the state of Texas, for instance, because you want to be able to make decisions about how to control your own body? And I'm so sick also of seeing on television people who were screaming that I was infringing on their rights because I asked them to wear a mask, telling me that I have to have a baby that I don't necessarily want, or that I can't. You can reverse
that argument with vaccines as well. So
I would still argue that a shot in your arm is a little bit different than a commitment to a person for 18 years. And Republicans also, no support for the social services that they want to do. Well, they just say, have a baby and deal with it.
Yeah. I think the assumption that that the poor, helping the poor by giving them more abortions seems pretty gross to me.
It's giving them options.
Yes, of course. That's what we call it. Up next, the media inflaming divisions and ramping up hysteria over the Supreme Court's abortion leak.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.